Okay, we're going live. I am coming to you from beautiful Carson City, Nevada, and I'm in the RV park that is located at the Gold Dust Casino here. It's pretty inexpensive for an RV park these days, and I'm down here to do some flight training. Let's see who we've got all here. First of all, let me go over here and make sure that the audio is working. I think it is. So tell me if there are issues with the audio. And I'm going to put that over there and look at, let's see if we did the display. Oh my, that's crazy. Okay, so much for that. All right, so we have N3PKJ Todd, who is saying hello to Andy Cowley. Optical Man Jeff, KE0OG says hello, Dave and all. Hoggies from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where it is 71 degrees and thunderstorms. Dave Fuller says hello from Southeast Missouri. Dennis is talking about lithium ion phosphate batteries. Mr. McGreblin, I haven't heard that one before, says hello all. Eddie asks if it's smoky in Carson City, and the answer is yes, today it was. We took off, and frankly, I think we were at minimums for VFR flying. It was very smoky, hazy, hard to see the mountains. We could see the ground. I'm not sure we could make out much on the ground, but we could see the ground. So we were fine from that point of view. But it is smoky. The wind that brings us the smoke, there's several fires just over the border. One's right next to I-80. The other two are called the Mosquito Fire collectively. And they can burn all the mosquitoes they want. I'll tell you, they got my support on that. The Reno air races are going on just north of Reno at some airport up there. And they've been hit major big with the smoke. So yes, it is very smoky here today. Now, the last couple days it's been quite nice. It just depends on the wind. We're getting into a definite fall weather pattern. Last night I was actually using the heater in the RV during the night. Harry to Echo Zero India Papa Kilo says, hi, Dave and all. Hope all is well with me. It is. And Terry, I'm in 2 states over to the west. I'm in Nevada, very close to the California border. And as you can see, I'm in the motorhome here. So I'm sort of like Kevin Laughlin. And I'm using my motorhome as a studio. And I'm located in this RV park right near a casino. So Eddie K6SDW said a DC-10 filled with fire retardant just went overhead my QTH. Well, Eddie, you must not be far from me then, because as I understand, those fires are kind of due west of us. Mostly the smoke is blowing north, but then to the east, and it's kind of circled around, and we've got a little bit of it here. Not, when I came in on Monday evening through Reno, the smoke was so thick, it was like driving through heavy fog. And I had to, just had to get out in front of the RV with a machete knife and clear the way. I mean, it was that bad. And then when I got down to Carson City, it wasn't too bad. Carson City is actually a 25-minute drive south of Reno. So we are south a little ways from it. I had the opportunity, I was looking for something and the map was steering me in the wrong direction. and it went down by the seat of government. Carson City is the capital of Nevada, and I drove right through that capital area. One of those old buildings used to be the county clerk's office, and that's where my mother and father were married, right here in Carson City. Apparently, what happened was something led them to decide to elope, and they eloped and came here. Now, it had nothing to do with babies because I was born a year and some months after my parents were married. So, we could always think, oh, we'd have a great story. Gee, Dave was born premature at 5 weeks. No, it wasn't. I had occasion today to visit the Nevada Railroad Museum, which was quite interesting. Okay, Jeff Schreiber, good evening, Dave, and all loggies, N5 KVO from South Texas. Currently 85 and having really beautiful weather. That is mild for down there. It must be. Tom Murden, hello all. WB9 Yankee Echo Whiskey in Indianapolis. Reed AB8AS, hello Dave from Barbersville, West Virginia. KG says hello Dave and all loggies. Leo Gustafson, again at KK7CLY, 72 and overcast in Albany, Oregon. I hope you're not having any fires up there too. Charles Layton says hello everybody. Mr. Snowman says greetings from the UK. Hello. And I will also, of course, offer my condolences on the loss of your queen. In a way, she was all, and I think in a very real sense, the queen of the U.S. too. Americans have this weird fascination with British royalty. And, Harry coming over to California to be led around by the nose by his American wife, I think has been more useful for its humor value here than them doing anything. They made some kind of a deal with Netflix to provide content, but so far nothing has emerged. So, audio okay, good. Paul says I sound good. Good, thank you. I'm using the built-in microphone. This is an old HP Pavilion gaming PC that was the machine I used before I built a machine specially for doing the channel. And this is the machine that my assistant uses. So he went up to my home and while I was gone and did some more videos. We're current through yesterday. Today is the live stream. And I'll see if what I'm going to do is go through questions for tomorrow and put up some sort of a video for tomorrow that just is answering questions from the motorhome. I don't have anything I can draw on here other than a piece of paper and hold it up to the screen. So I'm not real well equipped for videos, but we'll try and do something that's definitely ham radio related. I might put up a short video of the Colorado or the Nevada Railroad Museum. What was interesting about it, a lot of the railroad museums in Colorado are all about narrow gauge. The stuff here is standard gauge. So when I went down there, the cars were bigger, everything was bigger. And they're doing a bunch of active restorations. And they take these trains out on the tracks and run them. Some of the stuff they were restoring was in pretty bad shape, but other stuff they restored, I got to go in one motor car, which is basically a bus for a railroad, a single vehicle, and was beautifully, beautifully, beautifully restored. He particularly pointed out to me the toilet, wanted me to look down into the toilet, and what you saw was the track below. So not anymore. You can't do that anymore. Okay, audio okay. Let's see. Paul Reed, AB8AS says audio okay. Paul Griffith, sound good. T-Ham Hobby, Echo 24, Mike Tango Alpha, hello, Dave and everyone. Mr. Snowman, audio great. Charles Layton, working fine. Arch Stanton, 5x9. Lon Allen, all sounds good. Hello from Indiana. Lon WZ9X. Bill Friend, all good, 5'9". KG says hello, Dave, and all Augies. Leo Gustafson again, 72 and overcast. Charles Layton, lots of people with audio reports. And Russell K4QPR, evening, Dave, and the Augies. John Ward, hello from W3OJ, Laurel, Maryland. And Don Burnett, hello from Ontario, from Don Burnett. N3PKJ, Todd, hi Dave, first time live stream watcher, welcome. What we try to do on the live stream is just a chat between us, and people sometimes ask questions, and I'll try to answer them off the cuff. Occasionally I'll have to take it off and make a separate video about it, but we'll see what we can do for that. I got the hex beam up. Okay, this must be that new buddy pole hex beam. The connector is BNC, wasn't ready for that. Yeah, I keep running out of adapters. People make these BNC things, and my entire station is SO239 and PL259. So I need adapters, and I've managed to misplace several of them. So now I've got to find a place that I can go get a bunch more. And just they're like pens in my office. I buy a box of 30 pens or something, and after 6 or 8 months they've all disappeared. So I have to go buy another box of pens. It's the same thing with these adapters. Gary Cochran, WD8 PRS in Springfield, Ohio. Zach Yeager, KI5XH. Zach in Edinburgh, Texas, 77 degrees, 79% humidity. Not too bad if you've got a fan on. It would actually be quite comfortable. Jeff Duffini, would a current balun be required for an off-center fed dipole? I don't know, to tell you the truth. I mean, I would think you would want to do that, but you don't want the voltages to change either. So trying to think how MFJ did it. They had a balun that was just a balun, the un being the coax, and they have another one. It's a 4-to-1, and I can't remember if it's a current balun or voltage. Maybe somebody can answer that questions here. Natalie Batista, KK4FLA, here's well, 41 tonight in upstate New York from Mr. Greblin. Buddy Pole is sending me an SO239 adapter. Good, good. That's good. They, those big antennas, the hex beams, should be designed to handle some power. And they're not really, there's nothing special about them that marks them as QRP antennas. So, yeah, I would think the SO239. Ramson Corian says, good evening to all from Chandler, Arizona. Hope everyone is doing well. K6STW, McClellan Air Park in Sacramento, California. Bob Horst, speaking of smoke, can it change 2-meter propagation? The Seattle 2-meter simplex net noticed big improvements during the last weekend's smoke. The answer is it will slightly change the dielectric constant of the air. Okay, and the dielectric constant determines how much bending there is when you have an area where you transition from one dielectric constant to another, there will be some bending of the wave. There's not bent just in a dielectric layer, but as the dielectric constants change, it will cause a wave to bend. So in that sense, if you had a layer of smoke and above it clear air, you've got a boundary. Now, I will grant you that the dielectric constant of smoky air and clear air is not going to be dramatically different, but it may be enough to form a duct and allow that signal to go quite a ways. J. Langley, N4NRL, greetings from Georgia. Bill Malman, hello Dave and the group from Gray, Tennessee, AB4P. And the last couple of weeks I couldn't make out neither the Coast Range nor the Cascades. Yeah, I know. When I came into town, like I said, it was like driving in thick fog. A lot of people had their lights on. It was just awful. And today, you know, where we were sitting on the runway, there's a C over on the mountain that Carson High School has put up over there, a C. And that was 3 miles away from where we were, and I could just make it out. So it was very smoky today. John Mills, Echo Alpha 8 / Golf 4, Sierra Tango Alpha. Greetings from the Canary Islands. Hopefully those volcanoes are behaving themselves there. Dave C, KD9JVY, howdy from Valparaiso, Indiana. Madison County Sound Labs, good evening and 73 best wishes to all from N1XV in New Jersey, which is in the New York City metro area. Natalie Batista, the Railroad Museum here is interesting. Henry Flagler and opening Florida up to people. Yes, they wanted to get people down there to experience the good climate and by land, which they did in droves. When the Great Depression hit, there was during the Florida land boom, and it's still people were going down there and buying land. I used to own a home in Tampa, Florida. James Porth says, hi Dave, greetings from Texas. Jim W5JAP. On Lee, KK7EMW. Hello Dave, hello everyone. Thank you, On. All right, Dave, watching from England. England has suffered the great loss of Queen Elizabeth II this week. The nation is in mourning as you speak. Yes, and we are too. You know, oddly enough, this is, I think, unusual. We have no formal tie with the Queen. We're not a Commonwealth nation. We rebelled against King George, of course. King George IV, was it? Anyway, Joe Biden, our president, ordered all flags in the country to be flown at half staff in memory of the Queen. I thought that was a really nice gesture on his part. We're all very interested in that and extend our best wishes to you and our blessings to your new king. And I've heard he's already firing staff. He's got how many billions in his estate, and he can't afford a little staff? Good grief. Anyway, Jeff Daffini put $25 in the channel funds. Thank you very, very much for that. I appreciate that. That's helped paying for this trip out here, by the way. And this airplane I am renting is $150 an hour. Plus, I've got to pay for the flight instructor. And she's sort of waffling on how much more training I'm going to need, which leads me to believe that she thinks I'm going to need a lot more training. So I said, well, I'll probably flunk the test, and so I'll have to retake parts of it and so on. She says, oh, no. We're going to get you to pass on the first time. So we'll see how it goes here. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Let's see. AB. Dave, if you could do one hobby you regret not doing, what would it be? Well, the hobby that I've always wanted to do all my life since I was a child is ham radio. And I've been doing that much of my life. I've been a ham, 75, so for 47 years. And I enjoy it. It's a great hobby. I don't know if there's another hobby, except maybe physical fitness would have come in handy. Um, you know, I'll embarrass myself here. When I got into the plane, they set the seat where they thought it would best fit my size, because I shrunk a couple inches since I was a teenager, and I'm just 5'9" now. And I sat in the seat and I couldn't pull the seat belt tight around me. They had to move the seat back further in order to pull the seat belt tight. That tells you something about my relative bulk versus pilots. It's not an issue on my own plane. In this plane's low wing, you've got to step up with nothing to hold on to. Step up onto the plane from behind the wing, up onto the wing and into the aircraft. And today when I went to get out of the airplane, I actually fell. And I didn't fall all the way to the ground, but I stumbled and made a fool of myself. I told them it'd be much easier if they had a little set of stairs for me, which I'm just absolutely sure they're going to run out and fix. But anyway, I like my airplane better. It's easier to get into and out of. And like I said, there are a lot of things. The throttle on this thing is just a slider on the center console, just a slider. And whereas I have a more traditional throttle arrangement, it's a pull thing like pulling a stop on an organ, but it has, if you twist it just a little bit, it's got a vernier on it, so you can just tweak the engine just a tiny bit. On this thing, I have to put my finger down so that I can feel how much it slid forward as I push it. Got my finger down on the console, pushing the thing against it just to get a little bit of it. I will be absolutely flat out and tell you that I like my own airplane better, but I'm learning how to use this Sling. I mean, it's got plenty of power. I mean, it flies like other airplanes do, and it's an airplane. They're ready built. You can't buy them as kits. So there are no amateur built Sling aircraft. They're expensive. But so I don't know what that hobby would be, because it's ham radio. I mean, it's interesting. There was a long period of my life when I wasn't doing much with it, when the kids were small and stuff like that. But I got back into it in a big way. See, Only to use speech processor with sideband or not, I've heard differing opinions. Let's talk about speech processing. Speech processing in ham radio terms is what in audio terms or musician terms is called compression. The lows are boosted and the highs are dropped down a bit. So it is a distortion of the signal. Although, frankly, if you do it judiciously, there's not much distortion. Your radio manual will tell you exactly how to properly set up compression. Now, the duty cycle for transmit on single sideband is about 20% with the speech audio set properly without compression. If you compress, the duty cycle is about 40%. In other words, you get 3 dB of effective gain out of speech compression. And a lot of people think it sounds better. I do. When I do my videos, not this because I can't, but when I do videos, I do add a little speech compression because I tend to kind of trail off at the end of my sentences and be a little quieter than I am at the beginning. Speech compression tends to level that out. Now, here's the thing. Does it distort your signal? A little, if done properly. If done improperly, it actually makes your signal harder to understand. So set it up the way that's in the book. Now, I will tell you this. It distorts, yes, but no one out there in radio land knows what you sound like. When somebody answers your CQ, it's somebody you've never spoken with before. They do not know what you sound like. So they'll take that compressed speech as being normal for you. And properly compressed speech sounds normal. It adds a factor without affecting the maximum value of the audio wave. It pushes up the average without pushing up the peak. In other words, it's boosting the quiet stuff and the middle quiet stuff up, okay? And it will still sound very much like you. I am a believer in compression. I have my radio set up so that it is on all the time. And I find it gets me a little bit more punch going there. If you turn it up too much, it will actually make your signal less intelligible. So that's why you should follow the instructions in your book. Now, if you have an output meter, there's two kinds. The ones that just wiggle back and forth with whatever is put out, but there are the kinds that are the peak reading. The peak reading. You can use those to check to see how much the compression is affecting your signal. But I'm a believer in compression. I would suggest going ahead and doing it. Ever thought of coming to the St. Louis area? I've been through there on the way to and from Dayton. Gigaparts has them. Okay. Oh, BNC adapters. They're $5, $6, $7 each. Everything's gone up these days. On my way out of here, I'm going to stop off at Chameleon because they're in Sparks, which is right next to Reno. There's this valley, kind of a circular valley. The west half is Reno, the east half is Sparks. And Reno has the airport, so they get the big name. Carson City down here, I'm not even sure it has scheduled air service. It's just a 6,000-foot runway, and it looks like quite a bit of a general aviation activity here. There's a place south of here called Minden, and it's not very big, but they have another airport, again, about 6,000 feet. So it's a fine. They've got some nice airports here, but I don't think they, just because there's an airport doesn't mean there's scheduled air service. So, and I think most people here go up to Reno, even though this is the capital. So you've got the, whatever they call their legislators, are going hither and yon. And of course, Nevada is full of gambling casinos. I think that's one of the great marketing coups of the last century, is changing the term gambling to gaming. It's gambling. Gaming is when you play a game and, if you win, you might get a kiss from your wife. That's it. Gambling is when they involve real money. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I went over to the casino and found an ATM. And they have some preset amounts that you can withdraw. The first one is $20. Okay, whoopee. The next one, you push the button, it's $300. And then it goes up like $500, $1,000, $1,500, and $3,000 that you can withdraw using your debit card. And wow, never heard of such a thing. My credit union won't allow more than $400 a day withdrawal anyway, regardless. So I just put in $200, got that, and left. But okay, let's see. The BNC adapters, Gigaparts has them, yes. There are lots of places. There's a place called rfparts.com that has every kind of adapter known to mankind. Now, if you get the one from the microwave adapters, the SMA, to the SO239, get the one that has a cord on it, because that way you don't put so much stress. The SMA connectors are not very big, whereas the SO239, you put a PL259 on that, it can be quite large. You can just break the thing right off the rig. So, hello, Dave from KC2IQW in New Bern, North Carolina. How about someday we get to meet your XYL, my wife? I'll talk to her. She's not really excited about appearing on my YouTube. She has from time to time, but I'll ask her. I'll say that she's got an audience waiting out there. Okay, I used a 1-to-1 current balun on a center fed fan dipole, worked well. Yes, that will work very well. You can do either a voltage or a current balun at the center of an antenna. Backer, hi Dave, vertical HF antennas, all the connections are at the bottom. Okay, yes, that's true. Question is, where I live, we get snow. If the base and radials are buried in snow, will that affect the antenna? The answer is not much. Now, remember the first rule of antennas is everything affects everything. So the snow has a dielectric constant that is different from air. Now, snow is made of pure water with whatever minerals. The actual pH of rainwater is about 5.6, so it's slightly acidic. But fresh water, which is what snow is made of, is an insulator. You have to put salt into it to make it a conductor. And what actually does the conducting in salt water are the positive and negative ions, the sodium ion and the chlorine ion. Those are the things that move. Okay. Yeah, so if they're buried in the snow, you're fine. I would recommend that you make sure that all your connections, especially the coax, are watertight as you can, and that you try to, if you have to, go brush the snow off of it if something is having trouble working, but it should not materially affect the performance of your antenna. And it shouldn't change the tuning of the antenna very much either. We'll change it somewhat, because it is a dielectric, just like air is a dielectric. It has a very different dielectric constant. Okay. Let's see. Rita Harriman. Hi, Dave. I want to buy my husband, Bob Harriman, N1 LYV and AV680 because he has no room for radials. The AV680 is a fine antenna. Now, it's made by Pygane, I think. Anyway, it's one of those antennas that does not require radials. I would recommend that it be mounted 10 feet. The bottom should be about 10 feet off the ground. So get a pole or mount it next to the house or something like that. One thing to note, the AV680, they add an extra fee to cover 80 meters. What they don't tell you is that they only cover a tiny sliver of 80 meters. So unless your husband has a specific interest in 80 meters, such as FT8 or something like that, then I'd go with the AV640, which is less expensive, doesn't cover any of 80 meters. But if you want to cover just a sliver of 80 meters, like for FT8 or CW work or whatever, yeah, go ahead and get the AV680. It's a little bit taller, more expensive. Note that these antennas come as kits. They don't call them kits, but no two parts in there are attached to each other. It's a parts kit, and there are over 200 parts. So plan on spending 2 solid days putting that thing together. And then once you get it up, you have to tune it. This is where you choose the section of 80 meters that you want to use, and where you get all the other bands working just fine. The AV640 and AV680 had a vogue about 5 years ago. They're fine antennas. They're expensive. And if you have no room for radials, they're an obvious choice. Okay, so Brian Jessup, N2CMD in Raleigh, North Carolina. Walter Anderson added $10 to the chat revenue. Thank you very much. That goes into channel funds, which are going into an airplane right at the moment. Bill Castle sends $20. Thank you very much to both of you. And there's one more coming down here. What type plane is that I'm flying right now? I am flying a Sling, S-L-I-N-G. It is a manufacturer located in Central Europe. I think in the Czech Republic. I'm not sure. You'd have to double check that. They make this aircraft, which meets the requirements in the United States to be a light sport aircraft, meaning that it has a single engine, seats only 2 occupants, weighs, fully loaded, weighs less than 1,320 pounds. That's a weird number, and I think they came up with the number in kilograms and then converted it to pounds. The actual airplane weighs 500 to 600 pounds less than that, because you have to count the fuel load. Fuel is heavy. It's 6 pounds per gallon. Note that it's a lot lighter than water. Water is a little bit over 8 pounds a gallon. The petroleum is about 6 pounds a gallon for the gasoline. This one happens to burn automobile gasoline, which is cheaper than avgas, although not by a whole lot. I saw $5 a gallon gas today in Carson City. It varies widely depending where in town you pick it up, and I'm going to have to pick up a load here before too long. I am using the RV as my drive-around vehicle because the connection to bring in the Jeep didn't arrive in time to get done for this visit. And I was thinking of renting a car, but renting a car for 10 days would cost almost $1,000. So I said, we'll just drive the motorhome around. It's a little clunky and heavy, but it works. It does go from point A to point B. So the aircraft is a light sport aircraft. It has low wings, seats 2. It has a bubble canopy all over the top. There are no spars or anything above, although there is a roll bar there in part of it. It is not a kit. It comes from the factory built, has Rotax 4-stroke engine. Some Rotax engines are 2-stroke. This is a 4-stroke engine. Like I said, it can burn automobile gas, so that saves a little money. And see, what else can I say about it? It's an airplane. It's a pain to get in and out of for me at 70. I mean, my flight instructor, I'd place her at about 25 years old. And she just pops up into that thing and into the aircraft. Oh, man, there's nothing to hold on to in the right place on that thing. So I have a very hard time getting up into, because I have to get on the wing and then in the aircraft, and vice versa. And today getting down, I fell. I didn't fall all the way to the ground. I probably would have broken something if I had done that. But I don't think the flaps appreciated my putting any weight on them. So that's the type of plane that it is. It's a light sport aircraft. So this can be flown by somebody with a sport pilot license, which is what I'm going for. And hopefully, fingers crossed, in a few days, I will have that license. I've told my wife, I said, I have persevered through thick and thin to get this thing. If this last chance thing doesn't work, I'll sell the airplane and we'll go back to just doing ham radio. So she doesn't like small planes because if there's any turbulence at all, they could get quite bumpy. We ran into some bumps a couple days ago. Today we took off pretty early, and it was very hazy. Hazy air is usually air that's kind of still, and it was still today, so we didn't have very much in the way of bump. Anyway, it's a Sling, and I'm not sure what the model number is, but you get the idea. It's a light sport aircraft. It's got a Rotax engine in it, which actually rotates too fast for the propeller, so there's a gear down kind of thing. And oh my goodness, that's a notification from the phone company telling me I'm going to be using up all my allotment on my data allotment on the phone here pretty quickly. So hopefully we've got a nice, clear signal through this thing right now. KG says, sounds like the C-118 Liberty plane we rode from Naval Air Station in Whidbey Island. Bill Castles, what model plane are you talking about? I don't know. I'm going to go for tomorrow and say, okay, give me the model number on this thing. It's Sling, S-L-I-N-G. If you look up Sling aircraft on Google, you'll find it there. Okay, ham radio. Hi, Dave from Russia. Is it true in the U.S. in CB you can use AM only? No, it is not. You can use both AM and single sideband, both upper sideband and lower sideband, so you can double the number of things going on a channel. And I know very little about CB, but I know that most people are probably using single sideband for that. He is Romeo 3 Kilo Delta Whiskey. Glenn Martin, hello from the far west Missouri area, N0QFT. And let's see, we got kind of mixed up here. Let's see, I mentioned Walter Anderson, Bill. Okay. VK Land, hello from Victor Kilo 4 Delta Papa Charlie. And we talked about the 640, our state capital, Salem, lost its commercial air service several years ago. Sacramento in California is a major air hub. So Optical Man Jeff KE0OG adds $15 and said, thanks, Dave, for all you do. Good luck with the flying. Thank you very much. Hoserman adds $2 to the channel revenue. Have you tried the RF Finder B1/? That's a new one on me. I haven't heard of that. I take that is something you can use to look for RFI interference. Rick Easton, since you use car gas, do you land on a road and push the plane to a gas pump at a gas station? I'm sure people have done that. I'm sure they've done that, but no. I asked him how he manages that. He has a bunch of 5-gallon gas cans, and he just goes to the gas station and fills them all up. And then you get these little fuel pumps that'll pump out of those and into the aircraft fuel tank. The hole for the fuel tank is not much bigger than that, so you can't really see down in there, especially if you've got a hose in there. My fuel tanks are plastic, actually, and are in the wing, so I have to get up on a ladder in order to add fuel, which is fun. Chris T7 Victor Echo Oscar said the price for the new Yaesu FT710 HF radio was released today, might be a contender with the ICOM 7300. I am sure they're going after that market because the ICOM 7310 was such a fabulous success that Yaesu and Kenwood both want a piece of that market. Now, this brings up a little bit of a quandary for me. I have put the ICOM 7310 as the reference in the reference station. And the 7300 is truthfully getting a little long in the tooth. It's a fabulous radio. I love that radio. But I will have to look at the FT710 because we've got to keep the reference station up to date. I mean, there's nothing wrong with leaving the 7300 in there, but the problem is if I'm telling people go buy the reference station, and if the 7310 is starting to become an older radio, it might be better so for comparable price, get the FT710. I can't say that till I've gotten one and I've taken a good long look at it. I've never had a relationship with Yaesu like I have with ICOM. So getting my hands on one will probably mean buying it. And so that's not going to happen till this aircraft business gets sorted out and I get my accounts back into the black. And we'll see. I mean, I'm curious about your point of view about we can't keep the reference station the same forever because times change. But I want it to be fairly stable because I give demonstrations with the reference station. So I will look for those prices. Okay. Bill Castle says, I have an S35 Bonanza and use an aluminum step ladder. Then when I get on the wing, I can haul the ladder up and take it with me. You know, I may just do that. They make little ladders for home use. You can get them with 2 steps or 3 steps or even with 1 step. As I told the flight instructor today, Michaela, that a ladder would be a very nice thing. I may just go get one and use it just to get in and out of that aircraft. I mean, it's silly because I'm 71 years old. I'm not in good shape. I'm way overweight. And, you know, maybe what I need to do is set up pedals underneath the desk with a generator so that the way my radio comes on is that I have to pedal while I'm talking. And then that way, that would keep me in shape. That really would. Okay, but Bill, I think you've got a very good idea there. David Patrick, I watched the Reno air races today online. Sure was fun and neat. In the late 60s, my dad took his kids there. So cool. Maybe someday again. Well, it's just up the road from us. And they're going ahead even with the smoke. Dave Patrick, good signal. Charles Layton, SLing the SLA, the model you're flying. I do have flying experiences from trying to finish my private at 2 different times in my life. Yeah, I've been 2 years on this journey to try to get it. And I credit you guys for keeping me motivated because I always tell you guys persevere. And so you've been telling me persevere until you get it. And I hope within a week I'll have it. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. O.J. Jenkins, we recently fought FM2. I think there's a spelling in there. OJ, I think, is K0OG. W2AEW, good evening from New Jersey, from Alan, W2AEW. Always nice to have you with us. We recently got FM too. Okay. Oh, on CB. Okay, that must be what he's referring to. I did not know that. It'd have to be narrowband FM because those channels are only about 10 kilohertz apart. Tim Fowler, hello Dave. A year ago you helped me get my technician. Today I have a general. Thank you so much for your expertise. KF0ERH is now K0SSD in South Dakota. Congratulations to you. And congratulations for persevering and getting your general. And I hope you're having some fun experiences on the air. Dave's Sling aircraft were designed and are manufactured in South Africa. Okay, I was only about 8,000 miles off. So I know there's a lot of aviation stuff going on in South America. So I'm going to go over to the screen. Now let me see if I can find that here. This is a different computer, so it's display. Oh, that's not going to do much good. Let's try this Sling aircraft. Okay, Sling aircraft. Well, there's a great looking, let's see, aircraft, LSA, light sport aircraft. There is a Sling high wing. I'm flying an LSA, 2 persons, Sling LSA. That looks like about the one I'm flying right there. That looks like about it. Oh, it's fixed landing gear that has Fowler flaps. Yeah, that looks like it. 500 feet per minute. Now they make other aircraft too. There is a high wing Sling. There is a, let me go back here to normal view. Headshot with logo, okay. And we'll go back to live streaming. I don't know how much of that you were able to see, some of it, but that does look like the aircraft I was flying in. Okay, I don't want a new desktop. I want this desktop. Anyway, that was about the aircraft. It's their LSA aircraft. Their other aircraft are bigger, have 4 seats and stuff like that. Okay, manufactured in South Africa. Thank you for correcting me. From Victor Kilo 4 Delta Papa Charlie. That is, of course, a Commonwealth country there. KG, I have a couple old Palomar mobile amplifiers, 250s. Would these work with my IC 7300? Yes, probably, one at a time. I assume they're HF amplifiers, and they would work with it. Now, I just put a video out a couple days ago on connecting that amplifier to your 7300. There are 3 connections. There's the, where am I here? I'm going to put this back up here so I can see myself in real time. There are 3 connections between the amplifier and the 7300. There's coax, of course. Then there is a key line that tells the amplifier you're transmitting. Otherwise, it just goes straight through. And then there is an ALC line coming back so that the 7300 will not overdrive the amplifier. Some amplifiers, like my ALS 500M, don't have that feedback, so you have to turn down the power to about 62 watts on it to not overdrive the amplifier. Okay, let's see. South Africa. Okay, Mike Blythe, Sling Company owner, taught me to fly. Cool. Paul C. Victor Kilo for Delta Papa Charlie. That is neat. Todd says you can't compare the FT710 with the 7300 since the FT710 is SDR, so is the 7300. The ICOM beat Yaesu to full SDR radios, and the 7300 is a full SDR radio. Okay. Charles Layton congratulates Paul. Anthony Becerra says, like, I'm in good health and happy. I'm doing fine. Thank you. The 7300 is an SDR through and through. It is all SDR. It does its conversion from analog to digital right after the first amplifier, which is just a preamp, really. And then it goes to digital, and it's digital all the way through till you get to the A to D converters for converting it to voice or code or whatever it may be. Are you familiar with VARAC, V-A-R-A-C? If so, how does it compare with, say, FL-Digi? I don't know. I've never heard of it before. Tell me a little bit about it. If it is a digital voice mode, I know there are some digital voice modes that are gaining in popularity. The really popular digital mode right now is FT8. And if you can do FT8, you can do FL-Digi, you can do all of these others. It takes the same setup. Okay, 73 from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Charles Layton, you're talking about staying current on the newer radios, and I understand that. I have 2 HF radios, and the newest one is 7 years old. It is an Eagle from Dentec. Very nice radio. And the other is an old Jupiter. I had a Jupiter, which was my primary radio, for 10 years and worked just fine. Paul says, Dave, the new Sling high wing would be a lot easier to get in and out of. It certainly would. However, the Sling high wing is a 4-seater, so it would not qualify as a light sport aircraft. I know my aircraft is a high wing and is much easier to get in and out of. Rick Easton, FAA inspectors are trained to sound scary, but they are about as reasonable as people can get. We'll find out. Glenn Martin, no audio. Audio now. Did I lose audio? It looks like, I'll bet when I went to the screen, desktop audio. No, it says it has audio. It said it had audio. I'm sorry about that. Christopher Andrews, hey Dave, after playing with SDRs for a while, I've passed my standard exam here in Australia and now waiting my license. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, Christopher, welcome to Ham Radio. Congratulations on passing your exam there. And I hope that you have a grand and fun future in Ham Radio. Welcome to the fraternity. Okay. Todd says, Todd sent something and then retracted it. Okay, we can hear you. I can hear. Good evening, everyone from Fort Worth, Texas. Your audio is fine. For tomorrow's video, I'm going to take some questions from the hamradioanswers@gmail.com and see if I can't talk to those. They'll be informal videos, but I want to keep the channel going. I mean, after all, you guys are supporting me in this, and I want to support you in this and make, I may sneak in a video about the Nevada Railroad Museum. That was pretty cool. But otherwise, we're going to stick to ham radio here. I noticed on the Sling, there's a little place to attach a GoPro. I am tempted, I have my GoPro with me. I am tempted to stick it on there just to see what happens. I don't know. I'll have to ask my flight instructor if she doesn't mind being recorded so I can have some audio to go with that rather than an after the fact narration. but we'll see how that works out. The Sky videos, I don't have a separate channel for them yet because there just aren't very many of them. I think I'm up to Sky 10 or Sky 11, whereas I'm up to Ask Dave. I'm getting close to 800. So we'll try and make some ham radio videos out of this. All right. Was pleasantly surprised yesterday morning and worked a VK in Allenstown, QLD, Queensland, about 7:30 local to me here in Arkansas. Very nice to know my crank IR works very well on 40 through 6 meters. The crank IR is an interesting antenna. You crank it up to the right height to get the antenna. Now, the people at StepIR are convinced that the best way to get a good match is to have the right length of a copper tape that runs up and down a pipe. It's a plastic pipe. So if you're going to be on 20 meters, you run up just 15 or 16 feet of it, and that's the right thing. Now, the difficulty is that a ground-mounted vertical, which is what this thing is, has a feed point impedance of about 30 ohms. So right there, you're looking at about a 1.6 to 1 SWR, even though it's a resonant match. It would have to be 50 ohms. And so I made the suggestion that you just use the tuner that's in your radio to just touch that up. And they couldn't understand how I could say that's a terrible thing. But I would suggest that because it's 30 ohms instead of 50, you use the tuner in your radio to touch it up. And you'll have a great, you might as well get that last little ounce of performance out of it. The crank IR is designed to be a portable antenna, and it is multi-band, but you have to change the band each time by cranking it to the right height. Now, my antenna, which is the big IR, is the same thing. It cranks that tape up and down, but there's a little stepper motor down at the bottom that does that. The stepper motor is part of the name of the company, but it's STEPP and then capital I, capital R, StepIR. And they are really aiming at the non-amateur radio market. Believe it or not, there are a lot of interest in HF from the financial crowd because it's faster by a millisecond or so than sending it via cable. Because in cable, you've got routers in between and stuff like that, whereas you're direct, instantaneous at the speed of light between a transmitter and a receiver. And they're also going after the military market, which really doesn't care how much it spends on antennas, but cares a great deal about the features. Now, there's an interesting law. This is not a law of physics. This is the law of the land. If a company does business with the federal government, they have to certify that the price they are charging is no more than they are charging any of their other customers. So if StepIR were to sell to amateurs at much lower prices, they'd have to turn around and sell that stuff to the Army at the amateur price if it's the same identical antenna. That's why the StepIRs are so expensive. Now, there are price-insensitive hams who have a lot more money than I do, who like to, just get the best. And the way StepIR does their beam antennas, they move the tapes in and out on each element to an optimum length for that band. And within a band, it can change a little bit too. Brad Rich has one of those antennas, and I've seen it as he was putting that thing up. And I did a video on both his grounding system and on his antenna. In fact, I used my drone to take pictures of it as it was up there in the air. So look that video up. It's quite interesting. A very good antenna. He runs it with full legal limit power, and he likes to contact POTA stations. He also likes to be the POTA Parks on the Air station, so he has a separate setup that he takes with him to do that. So let's see. Oh, Fort Worth, WW5V. Great conversation. Have fun, Fernando. Tom, hi, David. Charles Layton, and he is the one who got the crank IR. Glenn Martin, there was a radio museum in Virginia City years ago. It was a neat place, and he's from N0QFT. I shall have to look that up. You know, I've got a lot of every day. We fly for 2 hours, and then it gets bumpy, and we don't fly again till the next day. So it's a little frustrating. You know, I want to get this thing done, but we've only got 2 to 3 hours a day to work. And so I spend the rest of the time going to the Railroad Museum or whatever. I've discovered that they have the most enormous Walmart I've ever seen. And I've seen the one in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is their home. And they have a super monster one in Rogers, Arkansas, which is right next door. But this one takes the cake. It is a super center. Well, we have a super center in Montrose, but it's nothing like this. This thing just goes on and on and on. And of course, where's the milk? At the very back. So I had a little bit of a hike today. Let's see, Robert Evans. Hi, Dave, N7EXL. Bob, I just passed my extra class exam. I studied with some of your videos. Thanks. You are certainly welcome. Welcome to Amateur Extra Class. And do go ahead and become a volunteer examiner with your favorite volunteer examiner coordinator. I am a member of the ARRL's VEC. The W5YL is also popular. The one in Alaska is doing a lot of online exams. Online exams are becoming the rage because they're just so much easier for people. And there are places where you can search for exams, you know, that are being offered online, and just about any day of the week you can take the exam. Whereas in our local area, we only give exams 5 or 6 times a year. So the online is definitely the way to go these days. Okay, Michael Brown, I'm glad to have caught you live, Dave. Doing great work here on YouTube. Thank you. KG, I was pleased to learn that Buddy Pole, the makers of my hex beam, also supply the DoD. Yes, a lot of these people do. The amateur market is just not that big. It used to be that it was a big deal, even though there were technically fewer hams. The hams were the movers and shakers of the radio industry. Art Collins, for example, was a ham. Barry Goldwater, senator, was a ham. There are a lot of people who were hams. A lot of the companies said, you know, if you're going to come work with us, you really ought to be a ham, so you really learn how this stuff works. Well, now that cadre is kind of aged out of the workforce. But as I told my young grandnephew on Sunday, I said, ham radio can do a lot for you. He's actually an Augie. I discovered he came to me and told me he was an Augie. I didn't seem to want to leave me alone. In fact, it was quite interesting. I took my shirt in just to show him the OG on the shirt, which is curled up because they pre-shrank the shirt, but they didn't shrink this before they sewed it on. Anyway, Um, Charles Layton, I have found that if I let the counterpoise droop a little, I can get it very close to 50 ohms. Good deal. Use a UKITS analyzer to adjust the elements to get the best match. There you go. I discovered a new analyzer, did a video on it just recently, the SARC 100. The SARC 100 is actually obsolete. The open source movement that created this thing has moved on to the SARC 110 for about double the price. The SARC 100 can be had for about $125, which is way less than you're going to pay for another analyzer, and it does about the same things. And so I'm adding that to my arsenal of analyzers. The most flexible of my analyzers remains the MFJ 259B. They're up to the D model now. And they've got the 269, which also does 70 centimeters. I say flexible because I was one time trying to tune an antenna, and I couldn't find anywhere on the band that had any kind of a decent match. So I just started tuning around down in frequency and found that the antenna was about a foot or so too long. It was resonant way out of the band. And this was a commercial antenna. And it was the MFJ 17756. And I finally figured out, I asked MFJ for the construction drawings so I could double check to make sure that it was actually constructed properly, and it was. That they deliberately cut the antenna long, and you have to tune it into the part of the band that you want for 40. It doesn't cover all of 40, it covers half of 40 and all of 20. And so I got that all set up, all working. I was thinking about making that the reference station antenna, but the amount of tuning that I had to do, plus the fact that it only covered half of 40 meters, made me move to the MFJ 2010, which is like 80 bucks, less than $100, whereas these verticals are hundreds of dollars. And it just came right in on frequency, and it's an off-center fed dipole, covers 20 and 40, which are your important bands to get started on HF. It also covers 10 and 6, which are proving to be hot bands these days. We're getting closer to our maximum sunspots. As you know, we've had some very powerful sunspots recently that have blasted the earth with radiation. We've had some spectacular aurora, if you live in Canada or Iceland or something like that. And we had a couple days of just complete radio outage, but the sunspots are picking up. I'm getting reports from you of DX that has been phenomenal that you're working. This is the fun time to be on HF. Okay. Charles Layton, I don't use the tripod that came with the antenna. I use a metal pole put in another pipe welded into an 18-wheeler brake drum. Well, that ought to stay put. I know other people who use old automobile tires, lay them flat on the ground, fill them with concrete, stick a pole in the middle of it, and then if you need to move it, you can actually pull it over on its side and wheel it to where you want it to be. Or you can make it a bigger pole, but only about that long, so you can pick the thing, which would be several hundred pounds, put it in a truck or something like that, and take it off where it's going to go. But that will work. Ralph Leland, hi Dave and everyone from K4TA from Fork Union, Virginia. Good to see you. James Baranowski. Wow, I can't believe I caught you in live chat. This is Jim in Honduras saying greetings. Hello, Jim, down in Honduras. Quite a ways away. M446 says, hi, Dave. Well, we have had a good conversation here. I had to remember in Reno, I'm on Pacific time. So the live stream started an hour earlier. I did not want to miss it. I talked with my wife a little bit, usually we go downstairs to the, we had part of our basement finished as a media room, and the rest is crawl space. And I've got a quote shop, which is really a very disorganized storage room. And anyway, in the media room, we go downstairs, watch the national news, the local news, and then we watch a show, usually some BBC show, some murder mystery or something like that. And we do that every evening. But on Thursdays, I have to stop early, usually after the national news, and run upstairs and get everything ready for the live stream. So I'm glad that this computer is working well. I don't think the quality of the video is very high. This is not an HD camera. It's HD in the 720 sense. It's technically HD, but not full HD. And it certainly is not 4K. So, so there we have it. Like I said, I will try and get something up tomorrow. My assistant wants to go, he texted me a minute ago, wants to go to my house to do some work, but I really have nothing for him because he finished everything that I had. So we're going to be several days here. I'll try and get something up tomorrow, something up Saturday. It'll be short and sweet. It'll be an answer to some questions. And then come around Monday again, we'll be doing the same thing. We did a lot of videos in advance, but not enough to cover the up to 10 days that I'll be away. But I feel I owe it to everybody to get the one live stream and 5 videos up. I'm trying to improve the quality of the videos by scripting more of them and doing a little bit more in-depth search, not just a simple answer to a question, but maybe taking a simple question and kind of expanding it and talking about the general area of the question. Let's see, James Bernowski, I've been emailing you, that guy, about antennas in my projects. More pics will come as I get them. You did a thing on antenna diameter based on my questions. Yes, I did. I did that one about the 4-wire cage antenna. The only people I know of who actually have one is the ARRL, has a cage antenna for 80 meters. And by making the cage, it's just 4 wires that are about 4 feet apart. It acts as though it's a large conductor. And the larger the conductor, the wider the bandwidth of the antenna. Now, that is a little known fact for the very simple reason that on 40 meters and above, a simple wire antenna will cover the entire band. So who cares about having more bandwidth? I mean, it's going to work fine. But when you get down to 80 meters, and I guess to some degree, well, 60 meters is a very narrow band. So 80 meters, 160 meters, the big diameter of the wire or cage or tower or whatever can actually give you a measurable improvement in bandwidth. You're still not going to cover the whole band. You almost have to have a 10-foot radius or something like that. Let's see. Berthold Edmund. Hello, Dave. Greetings from Pohnpei, Micronesia. I appreciate your videos very much. Victor 6, Papa Bravo Echo. Oh, I'd like to have you in my logbook. Paul Griffith, video resolution okay since you're not getting any dropouts and the sound is good. I started watching TV on a GE black and white TV in the 1960s. I beat you a little bit. We got our first black and white TV in the 50s, late 50s. Living in Los Angeles within direct line of sight to Mount Wilson, we got superb signals. And a lot of people poo-poo black and white because of what they see on YouTube. And the old black and white images on YouTube are contrasty, grainy, fuzzy, and all that. That is not what television was like in those days. Television was nuanced. Yes, it was black and white, but it had every shade of gray in between. And especially later when they got into the 60s, they were able to get just really stunning, good quality signals out there. And nobody ever complained about the resolution of the signal. And then when color came along, the first receivers were picky and hard to operate. And then the receivers got better and better by the 70s. And nobody complained about the resolution. Now, one of the reasons is because the producers shot film for television differently from the way they shot it for the movies. In television, it was always a real close-up, so you could see the nuances of the eye. With HD, you can get a lot further away. It took HD a long time to catch on because a lot of people thought their television receivers were fine. And the same thing is happening with 4K. There's no 4K broadcasting to speak of that I know. I don't know of any. And I don't think Dish or DirecTV does 4K. You're going to have to get 4K over the internet, which means you've got to have a higher speed connection on the internet to do 4K. Now, YouTube, you can upload in 4K. I don't. I upload in HD, full HD. To the casual observer, there's not that much difference. But sometimes I do notice that some of the YouTube videos I watch, and I watch a lot, are particularly sharp, and so I'll go down and check the resolution, and sure enough, they're 4K. But I do have the equipment. I could shoot in 4K. I do have the equipment. I could edit in 4K. But why? Over 25% of my viewers watch my videos on their phone. So what good does it do to spend a lot of effort to create 4K videos for a phone? The mobile devices are picking up larger and larger and larger shares of the market. And so the 4K, I think, is starting to fade a bit into irrelevancy because people are using their mobiles. But there you have it. Okay. As far as quality is concerned, good enough is almost always good enough, yes. The infinite number of analog grayscales made up for the lack of resolution. True. Also, old NTSC television was not pixelized. That line across there was fully analog. And the transition from white to green or whatever it was could happen anywhere in there, not just on a pixel boundary. And I think that helped make it appear sharper than what you see in a lot of the YouTube videos. A lot of YouTubers who do like historical stuff, they use stock footage. Stock footage is extremely expensive, and so they use cheap stock footage, so it looks bad. Sometimes I have seen a particular piece of stock footage that's the original quality of the black and white image. And the original quality of the black and white image, granted it's only a 4:3, but it's higher than HD quality. Those original movie cameras, definitely higher than HD. And when you see them in 4K, they're beautiful, even though they're black and white. They're beautiful pictures, but we don't see very much. We need a museum somewhere where they set up black and white end to end, from studio all the way to the television, and get them properly aligned and everything like that, just so people can see how beautiful those pictures really were. They were gorgeous, nothing wrong with them. Okay, the programming was also really good back then, like the Outer Limits, Star Trek, and so on. Back then, there were 3 networks, and every major market usually had 1 or 2 independent stations. So you had 3 choices of something to watch in the evening. If you were going to watch the Mary Tyler Moore show, that was on one of the networks. Okay. If you watched the Twilight Zone, that was on another one of the networks. And one of the things that did for the country is pretty much everybody watched the same thing. So the next day at work, everybody had the same thing to talk about. Now, you go, so what? But it was something that would kind of bind the country together. You know, somebody at the water cooler would retell a joke from the Jackie Gleason show, and so on. And they didn't have censorship back in those days. And believe me, some of the stuff they put up there was definitely not politically correct, but it was funny as could be. It really was. And then there was Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Shouldn't be doing that. Paul Griffith, I get a better picture off the air than DirecTV. You are getting a digital signal, and it is very possibly higher quality than what you're getting on DirecTV. Programming really was good back then. The whole family would sit down and watch it. They had a lot of family series that were considered okay for families. So black and white was the truth. Yeah, there are striking no, slightly different from that. Ansel Adams, of course, was black and white. His color photographs were terrible. He really didn't know how to deal with color, but he sure knew how to deal with black and white. I learned photography in junior high school in black and white. I was one of the school's photographers, and we did the pictures for the student paper, and which was, I don't know how they converted them to halftones. I guess they did. And I don't know if they did it on the Mimeo. There was a way of doing halftones on a Mimeo. Boy, that was a long time ago. Very, very different set of technology. Somebody at some point here is going to ask me if I knew the Wright brothers and whether I actually flew in their first airplane. A lot of people don't know this, but their first airplane used a technique that's only used sometimes in specialized gliders and stuff like that, of wing warping. They studied birds extensively and mathematically, and looked at the way the birds would warp their wings to fly. And the original Wright Flyer, used wing warping. When they pulled on the levers, it would warp the wings to do the work of what today we do with ailerons, elevators, and a rudder. And so that was quite interesting. Of course, other companies that wanted to get in on the action had to avoid the Wright patents. And so that's where movable ailerons, movable rudders, things like that came into play, because that definitely wasn't wing warping. And wing warping was the big innovation on the Wright brothers airplane. The Wright brothers eventually had to stop making airplanes because these other guys had a better idea with these rudders and ailerons and stuff like that very quickly, I might add. But they did make engines all the way through World War II. Now, the aviation in the U.S. was not the hotbed of innovation that it was in France. And the words that we think come, aileron is a French word. Empennage is a French word. That's the back part of the airplane with the rudders and the elevators. Fuselage is a French word, and these stuck in aviation. There was a lot of stuff in the 20s with the barnstormers, but the real glory days of the aviation innovation were in the 1930s. And then, of course, the war forced massive steps forward. And before the war, there were very few airports. And so the airlines would run flying boats because there's lots of bodies of water almost everywhere in the US, even if only a reservoir. But then after the war, there were concrete airports everywhere. And so the flying boats disappeared because those concrete airports were sure a lot easier to deal with. So that's how we got to where we are today because of World War II. Well, we're out of time. Let's see. I learned developing. There's a special film that has a large amount of dots. Also, there were different sizes of dots for resolution. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Radio trivia, checkmate, king 2. This is white rook over. Yeah. The thing these days is to stick with the ICAO phonetics. The FAA is much more insistent on that than the FCC is. The FCC just says to identify yourself. They don't mandate ICAO phonetics, International Civil Aviation Organization. But the FAA really pushes hard on that. So we have to use that. Glenn Martin, black and white, developing and printing in the 4th and 5th grades. Still using it as a grad student and then postdoc. It was fun. I used to have a very nice darkroom, color darkroom. And then we moved down to southwestern Colorado about the time everything went digital. And you can do so much more with digital than you can in the darkroom. It was my CQ back in our first tribal MERS net here. Kind of fun doing that. I'm going to fire up our tribal net again. It'll probably mess with Polish radar on 151 megahertz. There you go. Wings Over the Rockies Museum is Denver had a Wright Flyer simulator. 13-year-old CAP cadet had pretty good luck in it. All the train pilots crashed into the ocean. I'm not surprised. Luis Blériot, yes, Blériot. He was one of the early people, pitot tube, same thing, pitot instead of pilot tube, pitot tube, French, NACA, the great reservoir of knowledge, became NASA. National Aeronautics something administration, but it was just concerned with airplanes. It was doing research on airplanes, did a lot of research on airplanes, developed some of the first wind tunnels. Okay, we are done. So thank you all so much for coming. Let me just check here and see. We picked up $72 in chat revenue. Thank you all so very much for that. That is very much appreciated. Also, I am really pushing the Patreon, and I'm trying to emphasize in everything that I do, take the name of the latest patron that I have and mention that in the video. So I've noticed quite a few people are jumping in lines and they get their name mentioned in a video. We'll try to get to all of them. And so I'm going to, at this point, say good evening to everyone from beautiful Carson City, Nevada, where my parents were married. I drove by the building today where they were married in 1950, 72 years ago this year. So until we next meet, 73.